Story number 1, Observation Deck. I arrived at Tower 17 on the 3rd of June, 2024, at 4 in the afternoon. The previous ranger, Marcus, had his truck loaded before I finished unpacking my gear. He said the radio had been acting up and left within 20 minutes. I didn't ask for details. In this work, you learn that some people just need to leave. The tower itself was standard issue, a steel frame structure about 80 feet high with a cab at the top containing the observation equipment, a cot, a small stove, and a radio. The view was clean. Ponderosa pines stretched in all directions, and on clear days you could see the ridgeline 40 miles out. My job was to watch for smoke, log weather data every 4 hours, and maintain the equipment. 14 days alone. I had done this rotation 5 times before. The first 3 days were routine. I scanned the forest systematically, logged temperatures and humidity, checked the radio batteries, and cleaned the optics. On the evening of day 3, I noticed a campfire approximately 2 miles to the northeast. I recorded the coordinates and the time, 9:30, 7 in the evening, and reported it to dispatch. They said they would send a ground unit to investigate in the morning. I continued my evening log and went to sleep. The next night at 9:37, the fire appeared again at the same coordinates. I verified the location twice before calling it in. Dispatch said they had sent a unit to the previous location and found no evidence of fire, no char marks, no ash. They suggested I might be seeing a reflection or an atmospheric effect. I assured them I understood the difference. I logged the observation anyway and watched until it disappeared at dawn. This pattern continued. Every night at 9:37, the fire appeared. Every morning, ground units found nothing. By day 6, I stopped calling it in after the first 2 reports. I simply logged it in the observation record and watched. The fire was small, consistent, and always in the same location. It never spread, no smoke column, just a steady glow. On day 7, I observed a figure standing beside the fire. I verified this through the scope twice before logging it. The figure was motionless, upright, facing away from the tower. It stood there for 6 hours without moving, without sitting, without any visible adjustment of posture. At dawn, it was gone, and so was the fire. I radioed dispatch and reported the figure. The dispatcher told me to log it but take no action unless I observed actual smoke or signs of immediate danger. I acknowledged and did not call again. The following night, there were 3 figures arranged around the fire. The night after that, 7. They stood in a loose circle, motionless, facing inward toward the flames. I watched them through the scope for as long as the light held. When I tried to radio dispatch, the radio produced a low-frequency hum that made speech impossible. I waited and tried again. The hum continued. I documented what I could in the log, but the radio remained unusable for the rest of the night. By the next morning, the radio worked normally. I did not mention the hum in my report. The figures continued to appear each night. The count increased. I stopped trying to estimate numbers after I reached 20. They never moved. They never made sound that I could hear. The radio hum returned each evening and stopped each dawn. On day 10, I woke at 3:15 in the morning to the sound of something outside. Not movement, not voices, a kind of pressure in the air. I looked out the window of the cab and saw figures at the base of the tower. All of them, 17 or more, standing in the darkness, looking up at me. Their faces were not distinct. I could not determine their features or their distance from the tower with any precision, though I knew they were there. I tried the emergency radio. It produced only the hum. I tried the main radio, the same. I bolted the door, which I should have done already, and sat on the cot with my water supply. I had approximately 3 days of rationed water. I had food for longer. They remained at the base of the tower. I did not look at them continuously. I maintained my observation logs. I drank water in measured amounts. I did not sleep, though I sat in the dark with my eyes closed for periods of time. At dawn on day 11, I looked out the window. They were still there, still motionless, still looking up. At dawn on day 12, they were gone. All of them. The base of the tower was empty. The forest was empty. The radio produced no hum. I sat in the cab for 2 hours before I unbolted the door. I completed my rotation as required. I maintained the observation logs with standard entries. I logged no figures. I logged no anomalies. I logged weather and visibility and the absence of smoke. On day 14, a truck arrived to relieve me. I packed my gear and left. I filed a verbal report with my supervisor 3 days later. I described what I had observed. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he told me I was being reassigned to desk coordination effective immediately. He said the reassignment was not disciplinary. He said it was precautionary. He gave me a non-disclosure agreement to sign. I signed it. Tower 17 was decommissioned 6 days after I left. The official reason was structural concerns. The tower was demolished 2 weeks later. I have since trained 3 other rangers who were reassigned from remote towers. We do not discuss the specifics of what we observed. We acknowledge the reassignments. We do not ask questions. My current assignment is permanent. The file on Tower 17 is closed. Story number 2, intake 67. I arrived at the Rural Crisis Center in eastern Montana for the overnight admission shift at 11:30 in the evening. The day supervisor, Margaret Chen, handed me the intake roster in the main office. One pending evaluation was scheduled for midnight. She said it would be a quiet night. She had been there since 7 in the morning and looked tired. I told her I had it covered. She left at 11:45. The pending patient arrived exactly at midnight. She was a 41-year-old woman referred by County Social Services. No family accompanied her. Her name was in the referral paperwork, but I will not include it here. The intake note from the county cited dissociative episodes and concerning statements about her children. She presented with flat affect and minimal verbal response. She sat in the waiting area without fidgeting or looking around. She simply waited. I brought her to room 4, the standard intake interview space. It had a desk, 2 chairs, and a window that looked out onto the parking lot. I began the intake protocol. Demographic questions first. She answered appropriately. Her date of birth, address, previous medical history, current medications. All standard. Then I asked about the reason for admission. She looked at me directly and asked if I could hear the counting. I noted this in my intake log. Possible auditory hallucination. I asked her to describe what she was hearing. She said it was rhythmic. 17 counts, then it started over. I asked if she heard voices attached to the counting. She said no, just the counting. I continued the intake interview. She answered questions about suicidal ideation and homicidal ideation appropriately. She denied both. She seemed calm. I documented her presentation as stable, but with possible auditory perceptual disturbance pending psychiatric evaluation. At approximately 12:50 in the morning, I heard it. A rhythmic tapping from the ventilation system above room 4. I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, then silence. Then it started again. 1, 2, 3. I made a note in my log that I had verified her auditory complaint. The tapping continued throughout the remainder of the interview. At 1:15 in the morning, I told her I would need to contact her emergency contact to inform them of her admission. She became agitated. She said they already knew. She said it happens every time someone tries to call out about the house. I asked her what she meant. She did not answer. She was looking at the wall behind me. I stood up and walked to the phone on the desk to call her emergency contact number. The line was dead. I checked the connection. It was seated properly. I tried again. Nothing. I pulled out my cell phone to call the facility's main line and report the phone issue. No signal. I had signal when I arrived at 11:30. I checked again. No bars. I looked at the patient. She was still looking at the wall. I left room 4 and walked to the main office to report the phone issue. I tried the office phone. Dead. I tried the backup line. Dead. I checked my cell phone again. No signal. I walked to the front desk where the night security officer, James Reeves, was stationed. I asked him if he had phone service. He said his cell phone had no signal either. He said he would check the facility lines. He picked up the main desk phone. He listened. He said nothing was coming through. He said this had never happened before. I went back to room 4. The patient was in the same position, looking at the wall. The tapping had stopped. I sat down and continued the intake interview. I asked her about her children. She said they were safe. I asked where they were. She said they were with her sister. I asked for her sister's contact information. She provided it. I asked her about the house she had mentioned. She did not respond. I asked again. She said, "It happens every time someone tries to call out about the house." I decided to complete the intake interview and address the communication issue afterward. I continued with the standard questions. Mental health history, psychiatric medications, previous hospitalizations. She answered each question appropriately. Then I asked if she had been admitted to this facility before. She paused. She said yes. I asked when. She said she did not remember. I asked how many times. She said she did not know. I pulled up our electronic records system on the computer in room 4. I searched her name. No results. I searched by date of birth. No results. I searched by social security number from her intake paperwork. No results. I told her our system showed no previous admissions. She said that was not possible. I said I would need to verify this with our records department in the morning. She did not respond. At 1:55 in the morning, I decided to check our paper records in the filing system. I walked to the records room and pulled intake files from the past 14 months. I searched for her name. I found 3 intake folders, all dated on the 17th of the month. One from 14 months prior, one from 13 months prior, one from 2 months prior, all with identical presenting complaints, all signed by different intake coordinators. I checked our staff directory for these names. None of them were listed as current or former employees. I made a note of this. I returned to room 4. The patient was asleep in her chair. I did not wake her. I sat at the desk and reviewed her current intake paperwork. At 2:15 in the morning, she woke up. She looked at me. She asked where she was. I told her she was at the crisis center. She asked why. I told her she had been admitted for evaluation. She said she wanted to leave. I asked her if she was having thoughts of harming herself or others. She said no. I asked if she was experiencing hallucinations or delusions. She said no. I asked if she remembered the past 2 hours. She said no. She said she felt fine. She said she wanted to go home. I reviewed the criteria for involuntary hold. She no longer met them. I could not legally detain her. I told her I would process her discharge. She said thank you. She stood up and walked to the waiting area. I completed the discharge paperwork. At 2:30, 2 in the morning, she left the facility. Communications restored at 2:40, 9 in the morning. James Reeves called the phone company. They said there had been no reported outage in our area. The lines had simply stopped functioning and then resumed. I completed my incident report per protocol and filed it in the clinical documentation system. My shift supervisor, David Moreno, reviewed it the next morning. He told me to refile it under administrative coding rather than clinical documentation. He said it was a communication malfunction, not a clinical event. I moved the report. I was reassigned to day rotation the following week. No explanation was provided. I requested access to the intake files I had reviewed. The records department said they had no record of the 3 previous admissions I had documented. I checked my handwritten intake log from that night. The entries were intact. The electronic system showed no corresponding records. The facility suspended overnight admissions for structural assessment 6 days after the incident. The notice was posted on the staff bulletin board. No timeline for resumption was given. I was called into the administrative office during my shift on the 8th day. I was informed that discussion of irregular intake procedures violated patient confidentiality agreements. I was instructed not to discuss the incident with other staff members or to include it in any official communication. I have written this account as an off-record field note. It will be filed in the restricted archive. No further action is required. The incident has been classified and archived. Story number 3, Utility Corridor. I arrived at the Riverside Detention Center on a Tuesday morning in November 2023. The facility had been closed since 2018, and the county was moving the sale forward to a private development group. My assignment was straightforward environmental health and safety compliance survey. Asbestos, lead paint, mold, air quality. Standard work. I had completed similar assessments at 17 decommissioned institutions over the previous decade and a half. The building itself was unremarkable. 3 stories, brick construction, built in 1984. The grounds were overgrown. The main entrance had been boarded but not sealed. I signed in with the county facilities manager, a man named Hendricks who had worked there during the final years of operation. He gave me keys and a radio. He said the power was still on in the main sections, but the east and west wings operated on backup systems only. He said the basement was off, limits due to structural concerns. I noted that in my preliminary log. I started in the east wing dormitory on the 2nd floor. 12 cells arranged in 2 rows. Standard institutional layout. I ran my thermal imaging scanner across the room to check for temperature differentials that might indicate insulation failure or HVAC problems. 11 cells registered between 68 and 71 degrees Fahrenheit. Cell 7 registered 38 degrees. I checked my equipment. The scanner was calibrated correctly. I checked the HVAC vents. They were identical to the other cells. I opened the cell door and stepped inside. The temperature difference was real. I could see my breath. The walls showed no condensation or frost. The air was dry and still. I set up my air quality sampling equipment in that cell. I took readings for particulates, volatile organic compounds, and background radiation. All normal. Then I activated my secondary audio recorder, a device I used to document ambient conditions and equipment sounds. I let it run for 5 minutes while I photographed the cell and took measurements. When I played back the recording, there was a sound underneath the ambient hum of the building. A vocalization, not words, not quite mechanical rhythmic. It repeated every 17 seconds. I listened to it 4 times. The sound was there. Then I checked my primary recorder. Nothing, only the ambient hum. I marked the cell for secondary inspection and locked it behind me. I radioed Hendricks and told him I needed him to return to the East Wing. He arrived 20 minutes later. We entered cell 7 together. The temperature was 70 degrees. My scanner confirmed it. Hendricks looked at me without expression. I asked him to wait while I ran the audio equipment again. This time there was no vocalization, only static on the backup recorder. My primary recorder registered nothing at all. I continued my survey. I completed the first and second floors without further anomalies. At 4 in the afternoon, I told Hendricks I needed to document the basement level. He said that was not possible. I cited my contract requirements. He said the basement was structurally unsound and had been sealed during decommissioning. I said I would note that in my report and proceed at my own risk. He did not stop me. The basement stairs were accessible from the main corridor. The door was unlocked. I descended with my equipment and a flashlight. The basement was divided into 6 sections. The isolation wing occupied the eastern section. This area had housed the most difficult cases during operation. Hendricks had mentioned this during our initial briefing, though I had not asked him to. All 6 isolation cell doors were standing open. I checked my notes from the county's decommissioning report. The doors had been welded shut in 2018. I photographed them. The welds were not visible. The hinges were intact and functional. There was no evidence of cutting or removal. I entered the first cell. The institutional furniture was arranged identically to the cells upstairs. A metal bed frame, a toilet, a sink, a small desk. The items had supposedly been removed years ago. I photographed everything. I moved through the remaining 5 cells. Each one was identical. Each one contained the same arrangement of furniture. Each one was empty of any other material. I completed my documentation and turned to leave the isolation wing. The stairwell door was locked. I had not locked it. I had left it open. I tried the handle again. It was definitely locked. I radioed Hendricks. No response. I tried again. Still no response. I waited. I checked my equipment. My radio was functioning. I tried a 3rd time. Hendricks responded after the 4th attempt. His voice was distant. He said he would come get me. I waited in the basement for 40 minutes. Hendricks did not appear. I attempted to force the stairwell door. It did not yield. I moved through the basement to locate an alternative exit. I found a ground, level window well in the eastern wall. The window was painted shut, but the frame was compromised. I broke the glass and climbed through to the exterior. I emerged on the north side of the building. Hendricks was waiting in his truck. He did not ask what I had found. I did not offer details. I completed my report over the following 3 days. I documented the East Wing temperature differential as a potential HVAC balancing issue and recommended secondary inspection. I documented the air quality as acceptable. I noted that the basement level was inaccessible due to structural concerns and recommended it be sealed prior to sale. I did not mention the isolation cells. I did not mention the audio recordings. I did not mention the locked door. The county accepted my report. The sale proceeded. The basement was sealed with concrete block during the final week of November. The facility was demolished in April 2020 during an unscheduled weekend operation. No prior notice was issued to neighboring properties. My firm reassigned me to commercial retail projects. I have not worked on institutional facilities since. The incident was archived and classified as a routine compliance review with minor recommendations. No secondary inspection was ever conducted. No further documentation was requested. The file is closed.